Hello, good evening, and welcome back. West Midlands Police apologise after officer hauled away man under COVID laws for refusing to give his name on his way to work. And before we get into any more detail, I would just like to direct you to the Gov website, which states stop and question police powers. A police officer might stop you and ask what your name is, what you're doing in the area, where you're going. However, again according to the gov.uk website, you don't have to stop or answer any questions. If you don't, and there's no other reason to suspect you, then this alone can't be used as a reason to search or arrest you. That's it. That's it. Then it goes into if they're concerned that you're carrying something, or if there have been crimes in the area and you match the identity of one of the suspects, that kind of thing. But for what we're going to go into in this topic, that is all they can say. They can say, they can ask what your name is, why you're here, where you're going. If you're not doing anything suspicious, you just on your own business, minding your own business, then they have to leave you to it. That is where the police powers end. Of course, it seems that memo wasn't received by all of the police officers, as we see in the West Midlands. In Solihull, where police officers stopped a man. The two police officers were understood to be enforcing lockdown regulations, which is utter bullshit. Instead, they're just going after soft targets, if you will, which is, hey, this seems like a chap who isn't going to fight back, probably because they're indigenously British, and therefore they're not really going to be much of a hassle. And even if they are, they can't claim racism or say that they're one of the protected groups or have one of the protected characteristics. Therefore, it's easy to abuse our power on this person. In the footage shared online, the man is put in the back of the officer's squad car, and West Midlands Police later apologised to the man over his treatment by the officers. Was there any sort of, compensation or change in police practice or punishment for the officer involved? No. And you know why, don't you? It's because with all the who are Black Lives Matter, they skip over all lives matter, or that white lives matter, as we're talking about here, if you wish to make it racial, and therefore will not give a shit about what happens if it is a white chap who is having difficulty. And from what I can see here, it seems to escalate when the civilian asks for the police officer's body camera to be turned on. And we are going to watch the full video, but before we do, bear in mind that if you're travelling with somebody in your vehicle who you don't live with, you do have to wear a face mask by law. And yes, even police officers have to abide by this law. So let's watch. Once it loads. Because in this, after the ad, oh god, we love ads, you're going to see the entire encounter that happens between the civilian and the police, and see that the police officers, for no apparent reason, seem to escalate the matter where it really needn't be. So as you see from the video, that the police do not decide to observe the law in any way whatsoever. And bear in mind that, yes, I know the police are supposed to enforce the law, but there are also laws that they have to observe themselves. And as you can see from the footage that we've just watched, it does escalate once the body camera is turned on, when he's saying, oh, this is going to be dealt with in a different manner then. And although the police officer is very enthusiastic to say that he's got all the rights entirely to stop anybody he wants and search them and get details and all that good stuff, as we've just seen from the government website itself, he really doesn't. And I'll be the first to say that the police officers have too much power when it comes to just harassing innocent civilians. But we are going to use their own legislation, while we still can, in saying that this is definitely a breach of police powers. No doubt about it. That the gentleman in question would say, well, what's the reason for this? And it's like, well, it's COVID. It's like, okay, well, I don't have to give you any details by law due to stop and search laws, so I'm not going to, and I'm going to be on my way. And the police have no power whatsoever in order to tail him or apprehend him or accost him or physically touch him. None whatsoever. Of course, they do, and this brings us on to the bigger point, that recording police interactions is vital. So, good on that chap for two reasons. One, for filming it straight off, sees a police car coming, goes, oh, well, I'm going to record this straight away, and I encourage everybody else to do that as well. And secondly, to get the police officer to get his body camera recording as well. Because, of course, if anything were to happen to that body camera footage not being available, then that would be brought up and used against the police officer as well. So it is important that you get the police officer to turn on their body camera, and from what I've heard, it should be recording from 30 seconds before they press record anyway, because that has been used as evidence to show that police officers have planted drugs on an individual, that they think they're fine planting it and then turning their camera on without realizing that it's just showing them planting drugs on the innocent civilian. But that is important, twinned with filming the whole interaction, so that if anything does happen to the body camera footage, you can show that you requested it was turned on and the police officer stated that it was turned on. Because it's a Hollywood trope to say that the police officer can lie to you in order to get you to admit to a crime, as that is not actually the case, with some very minor and extreme exceptions. That is not the case. So when it comes to our interactions with the police, it's safe to say it's not the case that the police can lie in order to indict you. So that's definitely the tips from this. Thankfully, the chap was let go eventually, and the investigation into this has of course shown that the police officer was not right to do that at all, and that the police officer doesn't know what their own laws are to follow. And this is always the problem. It's a problem in two ways. Not just with police officers, that you'll have narcissistic people who choose the job because they're power hungry and wish to have the one-up on other people and have an entire establishment behind them. But of course also with the democratic process, that you have people who are power hungry seeking election. And whereas you want to elect somebody who doesn't want to be elected. It's the problem with selection bias for both of these cases, that by the very nature of the decision making, people are going to be picked who aren't ideal, and they do not want the position for the nature of the position, but for what they can do with the position. So it has to come down to civilian journalists like the chap here, and thankfully his name is not shown because he's an innocent civilian and was never charged with anything, but have him as an example for yourself. And I know there have been many stories like this before, and there will continue to be stories like this, and I look forward to it. I really do. There need to be more stories like this in order to help to keep police to account. And if you're concerned that filming something isn't quite going to do the trick because the police will confiscate your phone like they did to the chap here, then live stream it or broadcast it or send a live video to somebody else so that there is a copy existing in the cloud or elsewhere that can be used that the police cannot confiscate. These are things they really need to be doing. And I know, it is very unfortunate that the police are supposed to be there in order to protect you, an innocent civilian, from other actual threats. However, of course, as they're not doing their job because it is easier to go after yourself and Twitter trolls than it is to go after armed men, then you need to do this in order to protect yourself. Until, hopefully, you either get police who actually want to do their job and are oath takers instead of oath breakers, because those who think they can get one up over people realise that it isn't possible, and those psychopaths will leave the force and it won't be appealing to them anymore. And also, you'll then have the vast majority filled with police officers who wish to do their job and help keep people safe instead of going after soft, easy targets of individual indigenous folk who are either minding their own business going to work or just shit posting on the internet. And they can do that without having to feel a knock on their door, because what they're doing is helping the police to do their job by removing the stigma on arresting actual criminals and not having to be worried about racism, xenophobia, Islamophobia, or any other phobia or ism. So keep doing what you're doing, and I advise the same to everybody else. And I know that tomorrow is the great reopening, so by all means go patronise the businesses that you wish to, but do keep in mind that the police will most likely turn up, so do be sure to film those interactions. Because of course, if you're feeling cynical or pessimistic that the evidence will be used against you, of course you choose who you're sharing it with. And if that were to be the case, then you can remove the evidence, or it just isn't shown. But that is incredibly unlikely. They're going to have all the evidence that they want in order to indict you. So you need all the evidence that you can gather in order to show yourself as innocent. And we've got to keep doing this until the culture of the police change. Until maybe then the laws are changed in order to show that there is a definite human individual voter rebellion against how the police are being used as a political token at present. And that has to be enforced. That has to keep going. That has to be done again and again. And it has to be publicised as widely as possible in order to push that message across. And that is actionable steps that we can do in order to enact this change. But that's it from me. I know it's just a short one, but I want to know from you guys down below, do you think there's anything else we can do in order to enact change from the police side of things? Of course, I covered this before when it came down to police breaking lockdown rules themselves, and how should we go about encouraging them to do more of the same, of breaking lockdown rules and not enforcing them. And then it's a similar thing here, that how do we change the police culture to not only abide by the laws that currently exist, but also actually do their job as originally envisioned. I'm very intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about this down below, so let me know. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff really does help the channel out a lot. If you haven't subscribed, then please do so. And as always, until next time, have a good one.